welcome to episode 133 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Twitter and Instagram. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my hand-spun yarns. And we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? It is Sunday, April 16th, and it is Easter Sunday. For those of you who celebrate, I wish you a happy Easter. We do not celebrate, but we are enjoying a quiet weekend, just the two of us, because everybody is busy with Easter activities. So it has been a nice weekend so far. The weather has been, well, it's been okay. It was very warm yesterday, but super windy. And then today, we're expecting lots of rain. So we're just kind of hanging out. I think we're going to go out in a little while and get some lunch and stop by the market to get our provisions for the week and also get something for dinner. I'm thinking about doing a small ham for dinner tonight. Not that we really do an Easter dinner, but I just figured it might be nice. So I'll do a nice dinner for us. And then we'll have leftovers for the week, which is always a bonus. So I hope that you have had a wonderful week. I've done some crafting. I've done a lot of ripping and reknitting and ripping and reknitting, so I didn't get as much done as I wanted, but I think I'm on a good path now. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm hoping to have some finished things by next week's podcast, and lots of fun stuff to talk about. So let's jump right in. Today's tea that I am drinking is called a birthday tea. It is from Tea Market, which is my local tea shop, and it is a mix of Harney & Sons teas, and it is a really pretty tea. Let's see if I can show you a little bit of this. It smells like apricot. It's definitely a black tea, and then there are all kinds of pretty flowers in there. There are blue cornflowers. There are probably calendula petals, and then there are some orange petals too, and it just smells sweet and apricot and summery, and it is a delicious blend. As I said, I got it from my local tea shop, which is teamarketonline.com, and it is one of my favorites, and I am drinking it today in my Sip Something Sinful mug, which is a gift from my friend Anna. So this is one of my favorite teas, and delicious. It's a nice full-bodied black tea with some fruit flavors, kind of very summery fruit, and I just really, really like it. So that is the tea for today, and I am enjoying it warm because it is not super warm outside today, and we have had to start... So in Kansas, it is very, very humid, and so we often start running the air conditioner, what we would think of as early in the season because it gets super humid, and running the air conditioning keeps the house a little bit drier and a little bit less sticky. So we have already been running it a little bit, but it makes the house cool. So then I put on extra clothes. So yes, it is a little strange, but my hot tea tastes wonderful today. So let's jump into the knits. I have one that I've showed you before and two that I have not. So let's start with the one that I have showed you before. And of course I stacked this up in the wrong order, but we'll see. This is the dragon blanket that I am working on. I talked to you a little bit last week about how I came up with the concept and went from idea to swatches to testing to getting the actual blanket started. And I have made, I think last week when I started, I only had 1 or 1.5 repeats to show you. I have made some great progress this week. I worked on this a lot, actually, even after the podcast last weekend. This is the dragon skin blanket that I am doing. I think I have a name for it, but I'm not 100% sure. So we'll wait one more week before announcing that. I am between a third and a halfway done knitting. This is Cascade 220. It is in the colorway Turtle. And it is, sorry, it's Cascade 220 Superwash, so it will be great for a baby. And it is a little bit paler and duller than I was hoping for, but it is still a nice kind of green blanket with the dragon scales. And as I said, this is for a friend whose baby, they are doing the theme in fairy tales and dragons, and the nursery is in green and gray, so I think this will work quite nicely. I'm happy with the way this is knitting up. Now that I am into umpteen repeats of the chart, I pretty much have it memorized. I have my stitch markers in between each repeat, so I'm good to go. And well, I knit a bunch last weekend, then I knit Wednesday night, and I knit a repeat yesterday, so I'm going to try and get another repeat in today. And as you will see, I am almost done with my second design, so I'm going to try and knock that one out in the next day or two, and then get back to this working full-time. My deadline is that the baby shower is May 7th, and I need to finish before then so I can wash and block and take photos for the pattern, and then it will go off to the tech editor. I did find a tech editor this week, because even though I am one, I cannot tech edit my own patterns. I really need someone else's critical eye to take a look at them. So I believe I have that secured, so now I just need to finish knitting and take some photos and get those out. This one I was not planning to have a test knit, although if this is something that you are interested in and think you want to knit, please feel free to contact me if you are interested. Mostly I didn't think I would have this one test knit because it's a baby blanket. It's a specific kind of baby blanket, and I wasn't sure that there would be a lot of people who would be eager to test knit it. It's also fairly simple, so I think I can get away with just getting it tech edited. But if you are interested, contact me. And otherwise, I think this one will probably release early to mid-May. So that is that one. Second project on the needles. This is something that I started this week. I talked about starting it. I started another pair of socks. That is because, at least at the beginning of the week, I did not have a good enough handle on the blanket, which is kind of big, or the cowl that I'm working on, and I needed something small to take to work to be able to knit in my 20 minutes here and there and my lunch hours and whatnot. And this is one of those that I cast on and ripped because I thought I would do a different sock pattern, and I cast on and started knitting, and it turned out that it was going to be too tight on me, which is a little bit hard to do, but the pattern was only written for one size, and so I switched patterns, and then I cast on too many, and it was too big, and finally I am in the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It is just right. So the pattern that I settled on is the Avenues, which is by Mina, the expat knitter, or the knitting expat. And it is part of her New York sock collection. This was the second pattern released, so it was released on it was released on April 1st. It is kind of a simple slip stitch pattern. You may be able to see some of that there. That's all I will say about it, because I don't want to give anything away. The yarn is Spun Right Round. It is her 80-20 sport weight. It's 80% merino, 20% nylon, and it is in the colorway The Walkers, which is kind of a zombie colorway. It's got purples, yellows, and greens on a gray base. I used the first little bit of this yarn when I was knitting my mug cozies, so I had 80 grams left for a sock, or for a pair of socks, which should be just fine for me. And I will probably go just a wee bit longer before I put in a heel. I don't like super tall socks, but that is what I am working on. So these will be probably kind of slow, because I think I'm starting to get to the point where I can take my knits with me to work. So I don't know how quickly these will get knit, but it was one on the list of sock patterns that I would love to knit this year. So I decided to cast on and get going. So that is what I'm working on there, and that is still in my stashing all the way. I just don't think this Christmas bag is going to get put away this year, but it does have mustaches, and that makes me super happy. So yes, these are my Walker socks, the Avenues by Mina. So finally, the third project that I have been working on is my cowl. And just to speak a little bit about the design process for this one, I received some yarn generously from Mountain Meadow Wool, and this is the label for that. It is Mountain Meadow wool, and they generously sent me 2 skeins for review. It is their Alpine 3-ply DK, which is 260 yards per skein. It is worsted spun, 100% mountain merino targhee, made in Buffalo, Wyoming, and it is in the colorway Moss. And I think I showed these to you a few weeks ago. Like I said, they generously sent this to me, and I decided that I wanted to develop a pattern for it. So I thought about what I might want to do, and it coincided with Frenchie Aroha Knits was doing an Initiate Knit Design challenge. And what you did with her is you signed up, and it was a 10-day challenge. It started on Monday, April 3rd, I think. Let me think about which days were which. Yeah, Monday, April 3rd. And every couple days she sent you a prompt to discuss a step in the knitting design process. Now, I don't want to completely give away what she sent us because that was her material, and so I don't want to take that from her because she does teach classes on it, but I will discuss briefly sort of my process and how I followed it. The first step was sort of gathering your inspiration. Sometimes people don't have yarn in mind, but they have an idea for a design. I actually had the yarn in mind, but had to start thinking about what I might want to make. And the way I gathered my ideas was I made myself a Pinterest board, which I will be making public shortly. Right now it's still private because I didn't want to put it out there while I was still thinking about things. But I made myself a Pinterest, sort of an inspiration board of ideas for patterns or themes or colors or a variety of things that interested me and sort of felt like what I was going for in this design. So I just sort of spent the morning searching for inspiration and tagging things, including stitch patterns, pictures, just all kinds of things. And I made a board that was sort of representative of what I might want this design to be. The second step was starting to sketch what you wanted the design to be. And I decided that I wanted to do sort of an infinity loop cowl, so a longer cowl, scarf, round object, and started thinking about what kinds of stitch patterns I might want to use. And I had some ideas on there, and not every idea that I had came to pass. So if you were following my Instagram and watching what I was drawing and talking about, the finished design will be a little bit different from that. But I spent some time sketching and some ideas on what I wanted the borders to look like and how big I wanted it to be and whatnot. And so that was step 2. Step 3 was actually swatching, and if you don't start with yarn in mind, if you start with an idea, then you have to start swatching stitch patterns and playing with the yarn you choose. I had already had the yarn in mind, so I knew what I was doing in terms of swatching, but I did play with a bunch of different stitch patterns, and I played with recharting some of the charts in my Stitch Mastery charting software. And so I played around with that, and ultimately I decided on a stitch pattern that I liked at a gauge that I liked, and so that was really, really helpful. Step 4 was designing the math, which was basically taking your swatch and whatever gauge you got and how much yarn you had and sort of doing all the math to apply it to an object to make sure that you were getting what you wanted in the way of size, in the way of weight, like that you weren't going to run out of yarn, and sort of doing all the math that is involved there. And I like math. I posted some photos of my chicken scratchings. It took me a few iterations to sort of get to a spot that I liked. And then the 5th step was to sort of finalize the pattern and get knitting. So I don't have the swatch to show you because in this case I needed to swatch in the yarn that I had, and I wanted to use almost all of the yarn that I had. So I ended up pulling out the swatch. So I will be showing you basically it's not finished, but the object that I'm working on. As I said, I started with this gorgeous yarn from Mountain Meadow Wool. This is DK, it's their Alpine base. and it is in the colorway Moss, which is this dark green, and it is definitely a semi-solid. The camera probably won't show it, but it does have a subtle variation. And I have found this yarn really lovely to work with. Next week, when the design is finished, I will do a full review of this yarn and what I liked about it. But I am working on this. This is the second ball. I just joined it last night as a to start the second ball, so I should have my goal with this design was to knit it and have just a little bit left over, because that would allow for a subtle difference in gauge in anyone knitting the pattern. My goal was not to use every last scrap of the yarn, because I'm afraid that if I do that, then people trying to replicate the pattern if they wish to, in the yarn that it calls for, would potentially run out of yarn. And I think I'm gonna have like a few rows to spare, so that will be in leftover yarn, and I think that will be perfect. So let's get to what I picked. I spent a lot of time looking at, as the name of the colorway suggests, moss. I spent time looking at trees and leaves, and ultimately I found a really cool leaf pattern that I really liked, and that is what I have chosen to put in the infinity cowl. So this is, it is knit all in one piece. I have it on a US 8 right now, a 40-inch needle, and I cast on what I needed and have started to knit, and I am a couple repeats in. This will be charted and written directions, and it is this really cool leaf pattern. And I am just a little over halfway done with the cowl, so I hope to finish this in the next few days. Then I would like to block it and take some glamour shots. The pattern is pretty much written. I am waiting mostly, well, really on both patterns, to knit the object so that I can take some final measurements once it is knit, and so that I can insert some photos. And this one is ready to go to the tech editor as well. And if this is something that interests you, if you think you'd like kind of a leafy, lacy cowl, I am definitely looking for testers for this one. I will also be posting on Instagram. The yarn that I have, like I said, it is the Mountain Meadow DK. You do not have to have this particular yarn, but I'm looking for a DK weight, and this is 260 yards, so it was a total of 520 yards. So we're probably looking between 5 and 550 yards. So if you have that in your stash and you are interested in test knitting, please feel free to contact me, and I will be looking at doing that in a couple weeks. My guess is the test knit will be 2 to 3 weeks long, because I don't think it's super intensive in terms of knitting. You know, it's a couple skeins of DK weight. So if you are interested, please let me know, and I would love to share that with you. So again, I don't have a finished name for this yet, and I don't want to give too many details away, but you should look for this early to mid-May, and I will be talking about this more next week, like I said, in addition to a full review of the yarn, which I am loving. So this has taken quite a bit of my time. This was another one of those where I started and ripped and started and ripped, but I am very pleased with it now, and I am looking forward to finishing it. So that is my second design. I actually have been inspired for a third design, and I ordered some yarn for that this week. I have to finish these two first, but then I have a third one. It is also in green, so I'm not sure what my fascination is with green these days, but there will be another, probably cowl. I'm thinking a lightweight cowl, and I don't know whether it'll be an eternity loop or a cowl itself, but I do have some inspiration for it, and I have spent some time looking for patterns already, so I am excited about that. So sip of tea, and then let's go on to the spins. Last week I showed you a Hello Yarn braid. It was pinks and purples and browns, and I have finished that. It is probably between 300 and 350 yards of sport weight. It is lovely barber pole goodness. I did have someone express some interest in this, so I don't know whether it will be available in the shop or not, because I'm going to take some photos and contact her this afternoon and see what she thinks. If she is not interested, then it will go into the shop. And it is still a little bit wet, so I can't get exact finished measurements yet, but this was a lovely spin. It was Blue-Faced Leicester, which I always enjoy spinning. It is pretty soft and very lovely. I think it would make a lovely shawlette. I think it would make great cushy socks, and I am excited to send this out into the world to its new home. So that is this week's spin. It was Hello Yarn on Blue-Faced Leicester Pink Treacle. It was a club colorway from March. So my spin this week, I was looking for something a little bit different because I have been doing lots of pinks and purples, and I came upon something that I just received towards the end of last year, so it is not as deep stash as some of the other things. This is Southern Cross Fibers November Club. It is called Space, and it is blues and a little bit of oranges and browns and lots of white, and it is just really, really lovely. It's got all kinds of different colors in there and little splotches that are hidden. It is in South African Superfine, which might be one of my favorite fibers to spin. It is super, 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 super soft. It is so soft. It might be the softest thing I've ever spun. And I just thought that I would try a little something different with colorways. So blues and browns, this is this week's spin. I am super excited to dig into this because I love, love, love the fiber, and I think it will be really nice and squishy and something lovely. So that is this week's spin. Southern Cross Fiber, as I said, it's called Space. So I think that's it for now. Like I said, I am busy working on designs and working on getting those out. I am starting to think about a knit along for the group. I was thinking in the past we have done hats. I believe we have done shawls. So I was thinking maybe this time we should do socks. I know that we are getting into the spring and summer months, and that that will bring summer of socks. And Sock It to Summer, and there are a variety of groups that do knit-alongs for socks during the summer. So I was thinking maybe we should do a month or two knit-along and also make it socks, and then you can double and triple and quadruple dip as many times as you like. The only rules would be it has to be. So I'm thinking maybe we'll start it May 1st and run it through June 30th. The rules would be that it has to be a roughly adult pair of socks, and because I don't want, I don't think it's really fair if a couple people knit little baby socks and then everybody else knits full-size socks, so I would say adult-size socks. I would also say less than 50% done before we start, so if you have more than one sock done, you can't submit it for that. And other than that, any pattern, any yarn, you can do worsted weight, you can do sock weight, whatever you want. So I think I am going to start a thread about that, and we'll plan to start that on May 1st. There will, of course, be prizes, sock yarn, sock patterns, and we can start to talk about what kinds of things that we might want to knit. So I hope that you have had a wonderful week. Thank you for spending time with me today. And until I see you next time, I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye!